I'm very pleased for you all to be here for our museum Midday. We're kind of celebrating all things nautical, and Tom and his book are just a fantastic segue into a larger celebration of wooden vessels and other vessels here in Ketchikan and that important history. So, Tom Crestodina, we will hand things off to you and tell us a little bit more about working with boats.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me here. The museum approached me a couple of months ago when we were before the book had actually been released to talk about doing a talk here today. Let me know if you can't hear me. They had talked to me about doing this, and they said we could, we know it's inconvenient, and you could Zoom it from wherever you live. And I was like, no, I'm coming. If we're going to do this thing, I'm going to Ketchikan if I get a chance. And part of the reason for that, I'll tell you about myself a little bit. I've been a fisherman and worked out of Ketchikan for a little more than 20 years. I fished on the fishing vessel Alsek, and I'll tell the story about that a little bit. And I got my start in art really on the galley table of the Alsek. My start making art that wasn't just for me on the galley table of the Alsek and in this community. So this was a really important place for me. So the way that all happened is, I'm originally from Chicago. They're the suburbs of Chicago. I came out to the West Coast in the mid-90s, and during my period of wandering around, my kind of beatnik era. And then I went to, and it was in Seattle that I got my start in the maritime industry. Come on in, it's okay. I got my start in the maritime industry, or the marine industry, at a boatyard in Seattle. And while I was there, it really dawned on me about boats in the sea and fishing and marine transport, the history, all the science, that there was so much to know that you could spend a lifetime learning and not even, and never exhaust the possibilities. And that was thrilling. So I went to school at the Seattle Maritime Academy for engineering, and for marine engineering, being a boat engineer. And while I was there, I was working at the boatyard, studying at the school, which was right next door, and then going back to the boatyard to help out with projects after school, and it was so much fun. But while I was there, John Peckham from Ketchikan and his beautiful boat, the Alsek, came out in the yard, and the yard put the boat right in the front by the gate so that the people driving by would see it, and they absolutely did it on purpose. It was so pretty, and the people from that boat, it was such a special operation. It was really beautiful. I would walk by it and just see it out of the water and just stare at it as I went by. It's just wonderful to see. And then they talked me into going with them. So I skipped my graduation ceremony at the Maritime Academy, never used my engineering ticket ever, went fishing, and that became my life for 20 plus years. PDF of the book that I'll talk about, but I also have a PowerPoint presentation to show you some of the stories of how this all kind of came about. So this is the Alsek, gasp. People in this audience have been so knowledgeable. They noticed we didn't have our little blue sun visor there. But this is Spencer Round, who some of you might know from Ketchikan, the Round family, great people. So I went fishing with these guys. I flew up to Sitka, and that was it. So I've been mainly a strictly salmon fisherman. I worked here in the summertime. And I would spend my winters. This was really a great perk of fishing, was that I'd spend my winters traveling. And I went, out of an interest in learning languages, I went to Poland because I wanted to learn to speak a Slavic language, which is and I fell in love with the city of Krakow, and then eventually my wife, and we had a son in 2008. So at that point, I stopped fishing for 2 years. I did not go back because I had a young family and I didn't want to be away. People who in the industry know how hard it is, and it's hard on families. So we decided not to for a little while. But then in 2011, the the price of salmon, the prediction, everything made it look like it was going to be an amazing year. My wife and I talked about it, and we decided I should go. But it was so hard to be away from my little boy, who I think I have a picture of here. This is Franjo, my little son. He does not look like that now. It was so hard to be away that it was like a physical ache sometimes. And so I started making these drawings that were like the ones in Richard Scarry's books or David Macaulay's wonderful books, that I wanted to kind of show him where's Dad, right? Where'd he go? We were not. So I started work on, and I was inspired a little bit by, I had seen these Marklin. These are these old German wind-up toys where they kind of take the proportions of the boat and they squish it, and it's just so cool. So I started drawing to try sort of emulating that, and this was one of the first ones that really caught people's imagination. So my son was born on February 10th of 2008. So that's up there, and people notice sometimes it looks like I misspelled Faruno on the radar because it says Franjo, which is his name. And I tried, and in a lot of my drawings I've hidden little dedications and tried to include little things for people who know the industry, like the underwear hanging in the engine room where it's warm and dry. So I have a second son who was born on May 22nd of 2015. So this was several years later, and this is the fifth and the most recent of the SEINER drawings that I've made. This boat was based on the fishing vessel Lady Jane, which some of you here know. And so I hung these pictures at, so when I made this picture, I brought it into town, and I thought people had responded to it so strongly, the other fishermen, that I thought I'd try to hang it up in a gallery. It's something I'd never considered doing with all the drawings I'd made my whole life. So I brought it to Anna Schaefer and Brandon at the Starboard Frames and Gifts at the Plaza Mall. It's not the most glamorous of all of America's shopping locations, but they were so great. They hung it up in the window, and they were like, "Bring us everything you have." And what was really special about that for me, what really made a difference in terms of, having kind of the audacity to go forward and try to make art and make it part of, make it my living, was that we were selling pictures pretty successfully in this place in Ketchikan where so much of what happens in the summertime is built around the tourists. It's built around the traffic from the cruise ships. And we were at the mall where those people didn't ever see it, right? They almost never go there. And it was the people of Ketchikan responding to my work that really gave me the courage to try to continue with this and to, do this public thing of showing my drawings to people. It's kind of personal, and at the same time I had to do it in public. And it was Ketchikan that made this possible. It made it so that I eventually ended up making a book, and I am grateful. It's this community, and it felt special that it was us, and not, this commercial trade that was is centered around the cruise ships. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was special that it was us, and I loved that, and I'm so thankful. I can't say it enough. So 4 years ago, I was asked by, so I had these pictures, I hung in a bunch of different places, but one place is at a coffee shop in Fisherman's Terminal in Seattle, and it's really good there. We got a perfect audience in the terminal. And so an editor from Sasquatch Books, whose children's imprint is Little Bigfoot, came into the coffee shop and talked to the owner and got my email address and contacted me about making the book. And I was, we were pumped. We were really excited about that. And then it took a really long time to do. So the book is this. Finally, 4 years later, it exists in physical form. I got one, my first copy of it in Ketchikan. It was sent by my wife to me while I was running the ALSEC as the captain for the first time this last year. And yes, so I want to talk a little bit about the drawings in the book and the stories behind them. And then if you guys have any questions or anything, we can get to those afterwards, I guess. So this is the cover, right? And I will make this, what was this, Control L?
Yes.
There we go. Okay, so while my name is the only one on the cover of the book, which after the process, if you were in there, you'd realize there's a lot of people who probably should have had their names on the cover. There should have been a long list, but especially Christy Cox, who was the editor, who kept me from going on and on and on about the things that I was really fascinated with that might not have connected with everyone, and also Tony Ong, who's the book designer. So he made the choices of the typefaces and set things up and took what would have been a sloppy mess and made it into a really polished work, and it was he was really great, including making this beautiful title page. So this is actually not the most recent. This in the actual book, this page, probably not an important point, but on this page in real life, we have this picture instead on the title page. And for residents of Ketchikan, this skiff might look familiar, as might the person in it. I won't say any more than that. It's not a helicopter book. So in each of the, it says it's 10 boats, but we snuck in this log bronc in the beginning because I just love those things. They're just so cool. I have actually a picture in the other application. These are real life log broncs, and the proportions are pretty much exactly the way I did it there. That's unique in the book to being like that. They are just great. I just love that. I love you can see them around. There's a couple of them on the beach here in Ketchikan. And this one is the smallest vessel in the United States Navy. It's former log bronc, and I think it was from Alaska, but I don't know the story of that for sure. Back to the book. So in each of the chapters of the book, we take a cutaway drawing like the ones that I've been doing for so long in this series, and then also break things down and try to make them into, to show the function of the boat and how it works. And what I really wanted to do the fishing boats. That was like the thing that drove this. But and I had a lot more stuff that I wanted to say about just the trollers as I learned about them. But this troller is a troller that works out of Sitka. They're a Bellingham boat, but it's the Nurka, owned by Joel Brady Power and Tella Adson, who are prominent fisher poets. And if you've never been to the Fisher Poets gathering in Astoria, which I have not either, but I am told it's wonderful, and I'm going this year. So Ray Troll's band plays there. This has for the last few years, so local talent. I spent, like with many of them, I've never done this, so I spent all this time with these guys talking to them about how things work, and we're ultimately not, this was an example of how we had to actually cut a lot of, sorry, it's time for me to pick up my son from school. That's my alarm. Okay, so like with a lot of, I have this vessel here. This one is Shift F5. There we go. That's the Nurka in front of the actual boat, in front of Mount Fairweather, north of Sitka. great people, great boat, and that was really an example of how the people on the boat helped me learn what I wanted to put in the book, and so I could get into the details. For instance, I learned about how the flashes work, and we couldn't use this stuff in the book because there just wasn't room. There was just so many drawings that we couldn't use, showing how the flasher on the lines makes a kind of circle that's bigger than the circle made by the lure in the end, so it's wiggling and sets up these powerful vibrations. I would have spent a lot of pages on stuff like this, but I was not allowed to. Or how the fish are pressure bled with low pressure water to create that like really great restaurant quality. This was, Teller told me all about this, and I made this drawing about it, designed by a medical student who was working on a trawler for a year, and he was like, you know what we could do? We could put low pressure water in the aorta and get all the blood out. And then it caught on like wildfire. And so these are the kind of things that we could have used a lot of pages up on this stuff. There's 2 different ways to do it in the different apps. Okay, so I did get it, we fit as much into the book as we could. It's 56 pages, but I feel like there's density. So this is I don't have the picture of this in the PDF, or it might be in the wrong order, but this is a tugboat that is based on a Titan class tug owned by Western, built, owned, and operated by Western Towboat in Seattle. You probably recognize these because they bring you shoestrings and pickles and fuel. So I wanted to there's a strong Alaska theme of the book, right? It's not explicit, we don't talk about it that much, but it's really about connections to Alaska, and this was one of the pieces that I wanted to talk about, and so there's a little bit of an Alaska-Hawaii, some jokes here, including how, I decided to put pretend that there'd be just one product in each container. So we have watermelons, and we had Spam, the Blue Tarp Supply Company, extra soft rubber boots. For the Spam, I was told that because it's a trademark product, that I couldn't make the container look like a can of Spam. So we opted to make it look like the product with little flecks of white. Really sets the imagination off. So that drawing was really fun to make, and I had one person, a guy in Hawaii, who has been pestering me to make a print of it. I never made prints of it, so I just sent it to him the other day, but it took about 3 months for me to get around to it. It was important to me to do this. I really wanted to make it so that the book has some real hard engineering in it, and mostly it's not. But this illustration showing how is hopefully clear, showing how the 4-stroke process of an engine works with it was really a challenge to try to do this with still drawings, to show this process in motion. And a little bit of inspiration came from this, there's an amazing book that has inspired all of this. It's by Richard Scarry called What Do People Do All Day, where he has hidden the 4-stroke process in a drawing where he doesn't explain it or anything, but it's in there in the corner. If you have kids and you don't have that book, you should go ask the bookstore to get it for you because it's amazing. So I wanted to have some hard engineering stuff, and this is about as much as we could do. This boat is. We played this game on the. I played this game with the SEINERs on the Facebook page for the Southeast Alaska Purse SEINERs, where I draw boats, but without any color, without the markings, and then I ask people to guess, and then I give 3 of the winners a free T-shirt, and they are amazingly good at it. They look at the rigging, and I'll get 60 responses, and they're mostly right. And sometimes it's the size of the radar, but I'm always tempted to say, what boat is that? But in this case, we have the correct number on it. That's not a dedication. This is the fishing vessel Challenger, fishes in Southeast Alaska. I think it's actually been tendering the last couple of years. I don't know, but Jeff Golden, wonderful man, runs the boat. This person is Noah Cash, kinda. He was a pretty famous fisherman. And while I was at a signing event for the book at Ballard Bookstore, this woman came in and said, and I recognized her, I was like, Carrie. She's like, yeah, oh, I worked on that boat for 6 years. So, and she didn't even know we were having a signing event. It was really kind of a fun thing. But when I made this drawing, so like with many of them, in general, with all of them, I go to see the boat where physically, go aboard and try to spend time and talk to people on the boat, but also take a ton of reference photos because I can't remember everything I want to put there, right? So on this one, I went there, it was 2019, it was in the summertime. I went aboard, I took all these photos, and then like before I had actually drawn the picture, like a week later, let's see, Shift F5, is that right? Yeah, this happened. The whole house just burned to a crisp, and it was, you could see the smoke from my, whoops. Yeah, this was what it looked like afterwards. The good news is that it was completely repaired, and it's better than ever. Yeah? I think it was an electrical fire, but we don't know for sure. But that's a good question. But so the boat is not in that condition now. Now it looks great, but I got to switch back to my other app. So I did the drawing after that fire had happened, and gave before it was repaired, and during that time, the owner's daughter bought the original from me and gave it as a gift to her father, and so there was a little bit of, we try to do what we can. So I would have spent, again, a lot of time on this, a lot of pages, but making these drawings is one of the real reasons I ever started making because when you try to explain to somebody how seining works, and like verbally with hand gestures, you can see them drift away right in the middle of it somewhere. So I've done these drawings in different ways a bunch of different times because I've done all these jobs and done everything but be the cook. It's the hardest job on the boat, but I've not done that. So this is where my background is, but we ended up only spending 2 pages on it because we got to make tough decisions sometimes. This one is the Cornelia Marie. That's the real boat that it is. There's a pretty famous boat. It's been on the TV show The Deadliest Catch on the Discovery Channel for many years. My friend Maria Dosal worked on the boat one year, and I asked her if she could hook me up so I could go down and check it out. She introduced me to the captain, Casey McManus, and we went and took a lot of pictures. I brought my son with me. It was really fun. We did not go fishing with them. But I drew, this is not very good resolution, but there are a lot of crab in here. And it took days and days to draw all those crab, which is not that big of a deal for me because the process of doing my drawings is a slow process, and I don't expect them to come out quickly. But the first time I did this, when I first started it, it was on a big sheet of paper, not that big, but on a big sheet of paper, I made out all my measurements about how I wanted things to be, and I started drawing the crab. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get these crab in here, and then we'll work on the rest of it. And then I realized that I had drawn in ink, this dimension here was too short. It was too low, so the people wouldn't fit. And I had worked for like 4 days on it. And so I took that piece of paper and I put it in the drawer in my flat file, and I got out a new piece of paper and I started over again. And this was during a time when we were trying to really work fast to get things done. And we had to step back because I wanted it to be the original drawing to be what went into the book, and so that was the choice we made. I also had to start over with this one because I've I've king crabbed, but not with this kind of pots. We used pyramid pots. And then when I drew this picture, I put the bridle on it the wrong way, and then somebody pointed it out to me that they wouldn't be able to get the trap open if it was like that, so I had to start that one over too. But it was really fun to be involved. The owners of the boat were great. It was a really They're good people. And these are the kinds of things that I really like to do too. Because I imagine, right, so you have to put a floating line, as any crabber knows, or pod fisherman. You put a floating line on the pot so that the line doesn't sink to the bottom and get stuck under a rock. So if you put a floating line there. And then you put a sinking line on the buoy because you don't want the line to sit all on the top of the surface of the water, so when boats come along, they get it in their propeller. So I was always thinking about, there's got to be a place in the middle where it makes this S shape. So I just really enjoyed drawing that. So that S, I just liked it. I drew this with colored pencils, and pigment pens, and a yellow and a green gel pen to get that vivid color there. This is a Coast Guard cutter that is based on the Sentinel class Coast Guard cutter. If you'd like to see one in real life, there are two of them docked just down the road here. They're really cool, and I kind of chose this because of this over the horizon boat that they have, the little fiberglass boats that they could deploy as they're underway. Because I wanted to make this little comic strip up here of the boat coming out and being recovered. And also, I wanted to do this because, of course, and include the helicopter and the rescue, because as fishermen, our relationship with the Coast Guard is one where we rely on them. If we're in bad trouble, that's who we go to, and I wanted to acknowledge that. Then we did a little more Coast Guard stuff. I tried to include safety stuff, partly because I felt like for a children's book, there should be the safety stuff, especially if we talk about danger, as to be reassuring, and also to talk about how important it is. We don't want to just talk about how things can go wrong. We want to talk about how we solve problems. And this is the Healy, which is the icebreaker of the Coast Guard. They have two, only one of them is being decommissioned, but it's a big ship. It does cool things, and I really want, if anybody here is in the Coast Guard, I want to get aboard that. So this boat, this drawing and this boat are based on the Tordenskjold, which is one of the fleet of early 20th century sailing schooners that were converted. This is not the most recent one, so it doesn't actually have the drawing of this is not the final version of the book. But they were sailing schooners that used, we couldn't go into this very much, but they would deploy these little dories. The guys with a hand gurdy would, fish for halibut, and it was a lot like work. There's an old Spencer Tracy movie called Captain's Courageous, was written by Rudyard Kipling, where they have one of these kind of schooners working in the Grand Banks in the North Atlantic, and the name of it is The We're Here. And it's a pretty good movie because it shows very much, the layout and everything is very much like these are still today. They've been changed, of course, with the bait house and stuff. And then this is kind of whoops. I showed the sailing schooner there, but there's a better drawing in the final versions in color. Then we talked about halibut. This was fun to draw how the halibut swim normally for about the first 6 months of their lives, and then the eye goes over to the other side, and they get that crazy look of. And it was fun to make this, to use a license plate to show how big the halibut is. It's an Alaska license plate. So we made. I have a picture of the Tordenskjold as it really is in real life. That's the Cornelia Murray. This is one of those the Sentinel class boats that's here. I think that one is in Florida though. And then this is the Tordenskjold, which is a museum boat. It's it's outside of the Museum of History and Industry. It's owned by an organization called Northwest Seaport that preserves historic boats. They have also the Arthur Foss, an old tugboat. It's really super cool. And if anybody's going to be in Seattle on December 17th, we're having drinks on the Arthur Foss. Yeah. All right. So this is based on the fireboat Duwamish, which was a Seattle fireboat built in 1909. This picture is anachronistic because this was not the internal layout, because these are diesel engines. It was a steamship when it was originally built, and when it fought this real fire in 1914, in July of 1914, just shortly after the Smith Tower was completed, and just a few weeks before the outbreak of World War I, a huge dock in Seattle that's right where the ferry terminal is downtown now, caught fire at 5,000 creosote impregnated pilings underneath it, and they caught fire underneath at low tide, and it was so much tar, so much fuel, and it got so hot that the heat built up incredibly quickly. The people that were on the dock didn't realize it, and when the heat came through the floor, it caused internal combustion of all these massive number of wooden crates. And the dock, which I can show you, was quite beautiful, and it was an inferno in a very short time. And the Duwamish fought the fire when the tugboat fleet, of which there were many, many boats on the waterfront of downtown Seattle at that time, came to try to fight the fire with their own pumps. When they would get close, the paint of their hulls would start to peel off, so they couldn't get in because their pumps weren't strong enough to shoot the water far enough. But the Duwamish was at the firehouse, which was luckily right next door, and they came and fought the fire. Could not save the dock, but very likely saved the city. And the boat was, and we couldn't say all this in the book, right? But the boat is owned by these really great historical preservation people now, and they're passionate about it. They'll talk to you about it. They'll tell you everything. But when they installed these engines in the 50s, the pump was so powerful that the two pumps was so powerful. It was the most powerful, the highest capacity of pumping for any fireboat in the world until I think 2005. So when it was 94 years old, and when she was 94 years old, sorry, and it has, and we did talk about this in the book. I had to do some calculation to figure out how to illustrate just how much water it can move. And it's enough to fill a railroad car with water in 90 seconds. It's a lot of water. Cool boat. You can't go aboard because it's not quite in visiting condition. So we talked a little bit more about them here. When the bow of this thing was built, they made it so the idea was that they could find a burning boat and smash it in the water, like hit it below the water line so it would sink, which you could not do now. And I don't know if they ever did it in its history, but that was part of the plan. It was called the Viking bow. And I have the pictures of that dock. It was really, the waterfront was really cool. This is the original Coleman dock, which is what the ferry terminal in Seattle is still called. But this fell in the water after being crashed into by a ship, and this one, of course, caught fire. These were the Mosquito Fleet boats that would have been fun. There was a lot of boats traveling around in Puget Sound during that time, and up to here. If we're going to talk about fishing, especially the way fishing works now. Okay, so this fishery has just gone bananas in the last few years in Bristol Bay, and I wanted to talk about it and explain it. It's one of those things if you try to tell somebody about this who doesn't know about it, they're not going to be able to picture just how crazy the Bristol Bay fishery is. So I tried to do my best to illustrate it, showing some of the stuff about how this works. The Nomar, the company that makes these bags, really wants me to make a big print of this. But I wanted to show, just how chaotic it is, right? And I take little liberties like putting the police party lights on top of the plane, which of course they're not. And then we did this drawing. You can't see it here, but the name of this boat is Oopsie Daisy. So that was my Bristol Bay section. The process is a little simpler, but I tried to show the cork line moving around as the fish hit it there. And those kinds of things are really fun for me to do. I drew this NOAA ship. This I drew completely from YouTube videos. I've never been aboard it, but there was one of the deckhands who I actually put in there, made these YouTube videos of the whole boat, and then with a lot of internet research. This is the only one where it was all done with internet research. Anyway, I chose it for the cover. Lots of fun to do. The original is quite big and is at my house. I have a picture of that real vessel also. Let's see, what do we got? That's a Bristol Bay. This is the Bristol Bay boat that's in the book is like a classic kind of Marco aluminum Bristol Bay boat. They were state of the art at one time. Now there's some really crazy things out there. And this is that NOAA ship. This is the Rainier. She's a beauty. And so I tried to, I had to take liberties because otherwise I couldn't fit it in the space. I only have 4 launches on there. But in reality it has 6 and a rescue boat on the other side. But part of the purpose was, even though we know it's a little bit cartoonish and I'm kind of a little bit of a caricature, I want to capture the lines of the thing as best I can. And then the final chapter of, no, that's the other one. So we showed like the internal layout. That was pretty fun to do. And, whoops. And then, because, in part it's a kid's book, and one of our missions was to, to show, what kind of possibilities are there, what do people do at sea, and we talk about how science is also part of it. And I loved making this. If anybody is in geology background, this is called an accretion wedge. Spent a long time learning about that. And then we kind of bring it home with the ferry, right? Because that's what the ferry does. This is a Puget Sound ferry. It's a diesel electric. I didn't say what kind of engine each boat has, but anyway. So this has because it makes more sense for them to convert the motive power into electricity and then use that to drive the 2 or sometimes 4 propellers that they have. I tried to show that with this next one. This was fun to do because there was a lot of people, right? There's a hockey goalie up here. There was drawing all the people was really, there was a little biker guy. It was enjoyable. And then I tried to show the diesel electric layout. This ferry is one of the ones that goes to Bremerton from Seattle, and it is fast. It's pretty cool. And then we included a glossary because people don't know all the words. So that was, this was something that the editor insisted on, and I think it was a really great idea. Trawler, that's in here, right? So that is the book. So I have some, so in here, there was a lot of drawing. We wanted to do a salvage chapter. And while I was drawing this, I was like, oh man, this is happening right underneath my hand. It's like horrible, and talk about oil spills and stuff, which I hope to do in the follow-up project because this one has gone pretty well. So we're talking about it. And also, there's a lot of action, right? There's all these things happening. It's fun to talk about. Then I had hoped to do a section on sea life, talking about how, okay, the Cornelia Marie's galley is like a real kitchen, and it's like all this food stuffed in here, and then a little trawler galley, would be like this. So these are drawings we couldn't use. I wanted to show, since it's a kid's book and they're curious about these kind of things, and others might be too, what the head is like on a big boat, what it's like on the boat that I fished on for 20 years, where you burn yourself, and option C. So these are the people I work for. This is my son Franjo, and he's no longer 2 years old, he's 14. came fishing with me this last year. Pretty good skiff driver. And then some more recent pictures of, this is Franjo, his full name is Franciszek, but he was born in Poland, and Franjo is the short for that. Francis, in English. And this is Henrik, Henio, my son, at a store in Bellingham showing off the book. And my wife Anya, and our dog, Pickles, who also has his own little secret dedication in the book. So that's my story. This is what we've been working on for years. I can't believe that it's here. And again, the reason that this happened, the reason that I was able to make this thing for what it is because of this community and the support that I got here when we started doing this 11 years ago. It's Catch Can that made, the Catch Can should be on the cover. I mean, that's what happened here.
Next book.
And again, my gratitude is so deep to the people here who, Jimmy Kristovich brought me out to see one of the boats. I owe so much to so many people in this room. I'm really very thankful. So that's all I have for my presentation. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, criticisms, anything. Yeah?
So when I read the book, having been a troller, I was kind of curious why, obviously the Nerfa is a beautiful boat, and you captured it on the Fairweather grounds, but it's a freezer boat.
Yes.
And I don't know what percentage of trollers are freezer boats. I don't think it's a lot, but you chose not to show a hole with the salmon being belly ice. You did that with the halibut schooner.
With the halibut schooner, we did that.
Yeah, so I was just kind of wondering.
It was because we had to choose a model, an operation, and while I want to make the book as universal as possible and as representative of the fisheries as possible, it's also a portrait of those people. So I wanted to be authentic to that and the people that that helped me do it. So that was, that was the answer. We could, somebody asked me, why no bow picker, right? I'm doing what I can.
It's just more books.
Yeah.
More books. And it would be good to have a book of all your work.
Yeah.
Because
we should get you on an email to my publisher. Yes. Let's get a Zoom going. Yes. And definitely, I would love to make more books. I think making this was, it was hard, harder than I thought it would be, but I think the process will be easier now that I've been through it once. Like with absolutely anything you do, you go through it once and the second time is going to be easier. But it was a lot of work, years. Yeah?
Did you touch on the values of the boats and the classifications in the fishery?
Their dollar values?
Yeah.
No. That wasn't an aspect that we got into, but I think it would surprise people outside the industry how much money has to go through and into a boat, but it wasn't something we were going to go into in a kid's book, When we make the encyclopedia, then we'll.
Like that, what we're seeing today is just phenomenal.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah? You had something?
Oh yeah, so with your process, when you start, do you just have like a smaller sketch and then you build it bigger? Or could you just elaborate on, just as, inspiring younger artists, like how do you begin your process when you're looking at a vessel and then getting your finished piece? You said one of your pieces is very large, so I'm just kind of curious.
All the spread pieces are pretty big. Okay. They're all at least 13 by 19. Because the book's format was 12 by 8. So they're in this range. They were not all done at the same time. They were done in different pieces of paper from different places. But the process kind of starts out with like, what should I do? And with the first SEINERs that I did, those almost like came to me like I kind of saw it in my head. I was like, wow, oh, I have to do this, you know? And then sometimes, you know, the inspiration isn't there right away. For the book project, there was a structure. So I made, so I did all these drawings were done starting with pencil, because you can erase it and then, you know, go back and hopefully get the mistakes out before you make something you can't erase. And then they were all, almost all of them were drawn with, the process changed a little bit in the middle of it. It was long. I drew most of them with these Sakura Micron pens, which you can get at Tongass Business Center, which is like across the street here. But I stopped using these mostly, and then they were colored with colored pencils, and then I go back over with more ink. And then, so you start out measuring, and start out drawing the horizon, and then measure things into it, start to ink, and then color it with colored pencils, and then come back with ink, and then sometimes come back with more colored pencils, and then sometimes it'd be a mess, and I have to start over again. But I started using these alcohol markers, which if you are a young artist or any kind of artist, are super cool. They are a kind of marker that you can blend on the paper, and they have them here. They have also at Tongass Business Center. But I used an expensive brand called Copic, and they're super fun, really fun, very expensive kind of. If you only get a lot of them, I got like $800 worth. But if I used them with these pens, they would smear the ink and it would ruin the pen. So I had to switch to a different kind of pen. And then, if you like to draw, I really recommend trying out those alcohol markers. It's really fun. They have them there. Art Essentials is the brand that Tongass Business Center has. Really fun. But if you draw with anything, you know, go ahead, do it.
We probably have time for probably one more question. But folks, we will have Tom here, so there are still copies of his book available down at Parnassus if anyone wants to across the parking lot. But yeah, if anyone has one more question for Tom.
Yeah.
Does your kid still have the drawings?
Does my kid have the drawings?
For the ones that you made while you were
Okay, so the one that I made that was the most impactful is the one that I put my first son's birthday on. What we ultimately decided to do with that, rather than keep it, was there's a feller in the picture with a beard in the middle of it. So that guy is based on my crewmate and one of the people that the book is dedicated to, John Herricks. Herricks he made the boat work for a long time, and his impact on our operation, you just couldn't underestimate that. So he turned 60 the year that I made that drawing, but he was also married on his 20th birthday. So his 40th wedding anniversary and 60th birthday happened at the same time, and I conspired with his daughter in Vermont to fly my family out there secretly and go to the party and give him the picture framed as it was framed by Starboard to him as a present, because that felt like the best home for it. And he was sat there while I drew the whole thing at the galley table and the ALSEC, and he sat across from me with his coffee cups with sometimes coffee in it on the other side of the table, watching me draw that picture, and it felt like the right thing to do.
Good story.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you.